President Biden had to cut a deal with the Republicans to get the debt limit extension passed and avoid an economic catastrophe. But in doing so, he had to water down his climate change initiative, and that's causing a lot of concern among environmentalists. We're going to talk about that today with someone who's in the trenches and a lot more. So stay with us.
Welcome to Lean to the Left, home of no-holds-barred commentary, plus interviews with fascinating people. Some of them top experts, others simply with interesting stories to tell. You'll never know who'll show up at Lean to the Left. Now here's your host, Bob Gaddy.
Maya Van Rossum is the Delaware Riverkeeper and leader for the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. The Delaware Riverkeeper Network works through the 4 states of the Delaware River watershed, which are New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, at the national level using advocacy, science, and litigation. During Van Rossum's 30 years leading the network, she and her organization were the lead plaintiffs in a successful case that had this Pennsylvania Supreme Court breathe legal life into Pennsylvania's long-ignored Environmental Rights Amendment. Now, Van Rossum is advancing the Green Amendment movement, seeking to inspire and secure constitutional protection for environmental rights across the nation. She's the author of a book entitled The Green Amendment, The People's Fight for a Clean, Safe, and Healthy Environment. Meanwhile, she's just returned from Montana for a groundbreaking climate trial in which the young plaintiffs argued that Montana officials and agencies must be held accountable for exacerbating the climate crisis and thereby violating their constitutional rights. It marked the first constitutional climate trial in U.S. history. So welcome, Maya, to the Lean to the Left podcast. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today.
I'm so glad to be here. Yes, we have a lot to talk about.
All right. First of all, let's get into that trial in Montana. In a minute, we'll get into what you're doing with the Green Amendment and the Riverkeepers. But I want to get into this Montana trial. It sounds like that's a groundbreaking development. What's going on and what are the implications, Maya?
In the United States of America, there right now are 3 states, but only 3 states, that lift up environmental rights to give them highest constitutional standing. They literally place the rights of the people to things like pure water, clean air, a healthy environment, place them constitutionally on par with other fundamental rights, like the right to free speech and freedom of religion, for example. Those 3 states are Pennsylvania, as of last year, New York, and the state of Montana. And in Montana, the the Declaration of Rights language in the state constitution says that the people have a right to a clean and healthful environment. And so the argument that the youth plaintiffs were making was that Montana government officials are really exacerbating the climate crisis, growing the climate crisis by perpetuating the ongoing extraction, transportation, and consumption of dirty fossil fuels in the state. And as a result, they're making the climate crisis worse. And in so doing, they are violating the right of the youth plaintiffs to a clean and healthful environment, the constitutional right to a clean and healthful environment. So this whole trial was about proving that the plaintiffs are actually being harmed by the climate crisis. How? Proving that in Montana, the climate changing emissions are being released at an increasing rate because of government action, and that the right to a safe climate should be included as part of the right to a clean and healthful environment. And if all those 3 things fall into place, then the youth plaintiffs should win, and Montana government officials should really have to do right by the plaintiffs and do better when it comes to the climate crisis, including not perpetuating the ongoing use and growth of fossil fuels in the state.
All right. So you're in Pennsylvania. Why did you go all the way to Montana for this trial?
So I actually founded what I call my Green Amendment movement back in 2014. And that was because in my role as the Delaware Riverkeeper, as part of my efforts to battle fracking, I, along with 7 municipalities, challenged a very pro-fracking law that was passed in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania by the Pennsylvania legislature and was signed by the governor. And this fracking was happening in Pennsylvania, but this law put in place automatic waivers from environmental protection standards. It preempted the authority of local communities to exert any zoning authority on where fracking could be allowed to happen in their community. In fact, fracking had to be allowed to happen in every part of every community by virtue of this law. And so, long story short, after this legislation was passed, and I knew that it was going to exponentially expand fracking in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, making a bad situation devastatingly worse, I had to think and reflect with my team, like, how can we challenge a law that's been passed by the legislature and signed by the governor? And we recognize that in the Bill of Rights section of the Pennsylvania Constitution, there was a long ignored right of the people to pure water, clean air, and a healthful environment. And so we decided that we were going to challenge this law on constitutional grounds. And long story short, we were victorious. And so in December of 2013, we defeated this pro-fracking law before it was allowed to inflict its devastating harms. In the wake of that victory, I looked at Pennsylvania's language that had actually been placed in the Constitution in 1971. And I identified all the things that made this constitutional entitlement so powerful that it allowed us to defeat a law. And I then looked at every state constitution across the nation and found at that time, only Montana had this similar kind of constitutional entitlement. And so that's when, back 2013, 2014, I started to write the book about the Green Amendment, and I embarked on this journey to seek to have this kind of constitutional environmental rights entitlement added to every state constitution across the nation and ultimately at the federal level. There have been a number of really, in addition to my success against that pro-fracking law, there have been a number of really powerful cases demonstrating the power of this kind of constitutional protection. And we've secured a Green Amendment in the state of New York, and we have Green Amendment movements advancing in 15 other states. But this trial was really going to be a trial with evidence presented, and it was going to be the first time where the right to a clean and healthful environment was going to be tested to determine whether or not it could help address the climate crisis. And so I really wanted to be there to see the arguments that were being made on literally both sides of the aisle, and witness, so that I could come and speak with people like you about what actually happened, what was said, and do I think that the plaintiffs are going to be victorious, which, by the way, I think they will be.
Really? You think they will?
Oh, I think they will be. And the reason why I think they will be, and I've been saying this all along, when, there have been lots of climate actions based on constitutional language, because almost every state talks about the environment in their constitutions, but they don't do it in a way that makes it a right of the people and gives it the greatest constitutional legal strength. Only Pennsylvania, Montana, and again, now New York have done that. And so I have long said in my talks and in my book and on shows like this, that I believe that when a case is brought that is grounded in the kind of Green Amendment that I advocate for, that I believe it can be demonstrated to help address, to be victorious in proving that the right to a stable, to a safe climate is part of the environmental rights of the people. And government can be held accountable to address the climate in a meaningful way based on that constitutional entitlement. So I've long believed that the language, the Bill of Rights placement, along with the language in Montana and Pennsylvania, is the right language to support this kind of case. And so it was really exciting that the case was brought and was going so forward, because a lot of the other cases have been lost on very early on motions to dismiss. This case has survived multiple motions to dismiss, and again, actually has now gone to trial. And so we'll see what the judge says. But I think whatever way the judge rules, the case is going to be appealed, and I'm sure it's going to continue on on the judicial train.
It could end up before the U.S. Supreme Court.
It would end up before the Montana Supreme Court, because this
Oh.
is a Montana constitutional entitlement.
Oh, I see. Okay. And it's a civil trial, right?
Yes. And it's based on the Constitution. And the victory, if there is, once victory is achieved, which again, I believe it will be, it's not going to be about getting money for the plaintiffs. It's going to be about fixing the cause of the problem. And so a determination that what Montana's government officials are doing currently is resulting in a constitutional violation. And so that they have to change their behavior and bring it within the bounds of the Constitution. And exactly what that looks like is yet to be seen. But the first step is to make clear that what Montana government is doing currently is resulting in this kind of constitutional violation.
Okay. I want to make sure that our audience understands. You are an attorney, right?
I am an attorney, and I've also been an activist, an environmental activist for 30 years. And my organization, my Delaware Riverkeeper Network organization, as compared to my Green Amendments for the Generations organization, part of the core of what we do is litigate. So I don't serve as the litigator for my organization.
Mm-hmm.
I have the joy of being the plaintiff, but of course I'm very involved in our legal actions.
Okay, good. Now let's talk a little bit about the Green Amendment, what it would do, and is there an effort to do this as a federal law as opposed to, you've been talking about state by state.
Yeah. When it comes to the environment in the United States of America, there's a real carefully crafted and respected division of power, where the states have a lot of power when it comes to environmental protection. The federal government has a lot of power when it comes to environmental protection. And very often, the federal government might set the floor of what needs to be done, but the states are allowed to do better. Recognizing that, and also recognizing that at the state level, constitutional amendments happen all the time. They happen with great regularity. Not so at the federal level. And most people haven't thought about this concept. Most people actually, when I talk with them, they think that they have a right to a clean, healthy glass of water coming out of their faucet as dictated by environmental protection laws. And that's not actually the case. The way our laws are written at the state level, at the federal level, they're primarily focused on legalizing environmental pollution, degradation, and harm. If you get the right reviews and the right permits, you can go forth and inflict the damage. And in that system, too often, there are many things that are left unregulated, and there are many places and spaces where the accumulation of harm over space and time results in devastating consequences for communities. So with all of that as the background, I really believe that the best strategic path forward for getting this kind of a constitutional entitlement is to start at the state level first. Because number one, we get powerful protection because the states do have a lot of power. Number two, we're much more likely to have success in the near term and get that protection in the near term because amendments at the state level happen quite frequently. And number three, while we're going forth and doing that work of educating and organizing, seeking and securing and proving the power of green amendments at that state level, going state by state, we're actually creating the awareness and the foundation necessary to ultimately have a successful federal effort. But if we hop to the federal level first, we're not going to succeed because we haven't laid the foundation, and we're going to literally suck all of the oxygen out of the room. All the attention and all the money will go towards this federal effort that hasn't been properly positioned to succeed. So I feel like the better strategy, again, being an activist for all these years, the better strategy is to go state by state, do the work, create the necessary foundation. And at some point in the not too distant future, I think we'll reach a tipping point in terms of successes at the state level. And it will become clear that we've gotten to the point where we can now, in a very meaningful way, focus on also at the same time, in addition to work towards getting a federal amendment, because we need them both. We need state amendments to hold state legislators and municipal officials and judges and governors and regulatory agencies accountable at the state level. But of course, we also need a federal amendment to hold the Congress and the president and the EPA and agencies accountable. We need them both. One or the other isn't going to be good enough. So just strategically, going state by state first makes the most strategic sense.
Okay. I just want to let you know and our listeners that I have another guest, Jack Kerfoot, who is an environmental activist. He's a former oil industry executive, but years ago, he, I guess you could say, saw the light. And for the last many years, he's been working to fight climate change and to reduce America's reliance on fossil fuel. Jack has put together, Jack and I have put together a series of podcasts that analyze state by state, is through regions. We're doing Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, and so on, what individual states are doing to reduce reliance on fossil fuel. And we launched that on Thursday, the 29th of June. And that will be continuing every couple weeks, probably over the next few weeks. We have 5 episodes. So I just wanted to let you know that, Maya. I think you'd be interested in that. And I just wanted to put in a little plug to our listeners to be watching for those episodes.
That sounds really great. And I am interested. And I do also hope that one of the things that you might add to a future episode as you're thinking about the continuing evolution of this, because I'm sure it will be so great it'll continue on. One of the things that states are doing, activists in states are doing, are pursuing these green amendments. And Pennsylvania and Montana, when their amendments were passed, Pennsylvania was in 71, Montana was in 72. Neither of the amendments got used in a meaningful way until later on. And I told you Pennsylvania's story really quickly. Montana's first use was in 99. But the amendments that are advancing in the 15 other states, places from New Jersey to Texas to Washington to Hawaii and more, they, for the most part, at my encouragement, these states are explicitly including the right to a safer, stable climate in the language, so that it's no longer, you don't have to prove that a safe climate is part of the right to a clean and healthful environment. The constitutional entitlement will actually say it forthright, front and center. And so that will be a more powerful tool as well for folks.
All right, good. All right, now let's talk about the the budget deal that Biden had to cut with the Republicans. And tell me why there's a problem with some of the provisions of that agreement. We'll hear what Maya has to say about that when we return from this quick break.
First and foremost, I don't know that I agree that he had to cut it.
Okay.
When there was a lot of strategic talk about actually using a constitutional amendment to avoid having to cut this kind of deal or any deal whatsoever. And it was a real disappointment that the president didn't consider that more seriously and actually went down this path. So let me go really quickly over the 3 things, and then we can dive in more deeply. Number 1, the limitations on budget funding for critical agencies, which will include the Environmental Protection Agency, agencies like the Department of the Interior. That's going to result in a limitation of needed resources to implement and enforce the environmental laws that we have on the books. And of course, under the previous administration, already those agencies were severely cut and they need more resources. So that's a problem. The second problem is that the deal unilaterally amended from this backroom deal making of which the public had no part, nor did most of their legislators. There was the amendment of an iconic core environmental protection law. Actually, the first major federal environmental piece of legislation passed in this nation, the National Environmental Policy Act, which is a law critical for ensuring full, fair, and serious consideration of the environmental ramifications of government action before it's taken, as well as consideration of alternatives. That law got amended in really significant ways that undermines its strength and the ability of people to use it and be protected by it. And so the undermining of the law is a problem. But the other thing is, now the precedent is set that if you in the legislature want to get significant amendments to critical environmental protection laws that you can't get through the normal legislative process because the public won't support it, you just cut a backroom deal over the debt ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Now, this time it was the National Environmental Policy Act. I anticipate the next time it'll probably be the Clean Water Act, because there have been many efforts to gut the Clean Water Act by legislators. They have not been successful, but I'm sure now this is going to be the new strategy. So that's number two. And number three, this debt ceiling or this deal, it makes me throw up that it's called the Fiscal Responsibility Act, but that's what it's called. It actually also greased the wheels and mandated all federal government approvals for a very controversial fossil fuel project called the Mountain Valley Pipeline Project, a 303-mile long frack gas project that will cut through forests and mountains and rivers, environments, communities, public property, private property. In West Virginia and Virginia, when it's in operation, it will be responsible for the release of 89 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents every single year. And this pipeline has been successfully challenged by communities and residents of all kinds, challenged in the courts, and they have been winning because it's a bad project that cannot honor the critical environmental and community protection laws on the books. But now what the debt ceiling deal has done is it has mandated that all federal government approvals be given for this project by virtue of the debt ceiling deal. And it has stripped away the ability of residents to challenge those approvals in the courts. So now, not only are we going to have this devastating environmental, climate exacerbating, fossil fuel perpetuating project with the rights of people stripped away by virtue of the debt ceiling to challenge it through normal advocacy and judicial procedures. But we have also now signaled to all legislators, votes are for sale. And the next time there's a debt ceiling, quote unquote, crisis, you want my vote for the deal, make sure you put in my dirty fossil fuel, environmentally devastating, community rights stripping project. And unless you do that, you don't get my vote. The Mountain Valley Pipeline Project was put in there to buy the vote of Joe Manchin. And so now, again, this deal now says votes are for sale, but only if the president caves and allows these devastating projects to be mandated by virtue of the debt ceiling deal. So it's a very dangerous precedent when we're talking about legislative amendment or reform, or whether we're talking about dirty, devastating projects. It's all about votes for sale now in the next debt ceiling debate that comes along. It's a bad deal.
Yeah, you really put it into perspective there. Let's talk a little bit about the River Keepers and what you're doing with the River Keepers. You started that, 30 years ago?
So it was actually started by the community, right?
Okay.
I have the honor of being the River Keeper. The start of the organization was really a community effort.
Now, wait a minute. Now, the river, that's a title that you have, the River Keeper?
Yes. So the Delaware River Keepers
do you have a hat or a uniform or something? Or
I have an aura.
Nora. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
But what I have is I have a personal responsibility to make sure that I am always doing right by the river, and that I am being the river's voice in our human world, even when it's a difficult thing to do. And so that's really my job, is to make sure that the river does have a voice. Now,
why did you start doing that?
so there was actually at the time the Delaware Riverkeeper. So the Delaware Riverkeeper is the person, and I'm the person with the honor of bearing that title and have bared it for 30 years now.
Uh-huh.
The Delaware Riverkeeper Network is the organization, because taking care of a river as large and wonderful as the Delaware River is not the job of one person. It is the job of the community, and that's what the Delaware we were organizing the organization. There was one other organization in the nation on the Hudson where there was a riverkeeper, the Hudson Riverkeeper. The first Hudson Riverkeeper was John Cronin. And a gentleman named Bob Boyle conceived of this idea of having a person that was representing the river in the halls of government, out in the community, and again, taking personal responsibility for standing up for and protecting that river. And here in the Delaware River watershed, communities saw the power of that approach. Because people connect with people. Sure. And people want to follow people. And so seeing somebody exemplify how important it is to have that personal dedication to the natural resource that is the river, and how inspiring that can be. People in the Delaware said, that's a really great idea. Our Delaware River needs a voice in our human world. So we're going to have a Delaware Riverkeeper for the Delaware River, and we're going to have our organization, and there you go.
So did you have to run for that position, or did you just get appointed, or what?
So the organization was created, and then there was a gentleman. He's actually, we've lost him. His name was, oh my gosh, he was with the Ray Prophet Foundation. Joe Awesome, though that's not his last name. Why is it? He's your friend. Awesome. He was actually, or no, actually it was Ray Prophet. Joe worked with Ray. Ray Prophet was actually the first one to have that title of the Riverkeeper. And then for a brief period of time, there was another woman. And then the powers that be really had me take on that role. And it really was a decision of the organization as a community. So I didn't run for, we have a board of directors, we have a staff, we have members. And I guess through the work that I have been doing, it just naturally fell into place.
Then now how does it get funded, the Riverkeepers?
So the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, as well as Green Amendments for the Generations, because I run them both, so my personal principles and values dictate this kind of thing, it's donations and grants. Okay. We're not taking money from big business, because while anybody who knows me personally knows you can't buy Maya.
That's pretty obvious. I've talked to you for 20 minutes or half an hour or whatever, and I sure as hell wouldn't try to buy your act.
But people have. But the thing is, not everybody knows me personally. Right. So if I were ever to take money from the fossil fuel industry or corporations or people who are harming the river or harming and let's say I settled a lawsuit in the best possible way I could, or I took a position on an issue and you didn't agree with the position that I had taken. Right. If I was taking money from the industry, you might say, that's why she took that position.
Exactly.
Somebody bought her. But because I don't, what people say, usually, hopefully people who care about the river agree with my positions, but they might say, I don't exactly agree with what she's saying or what she's doing, but I know she's doing it because she believes that is what is right for the river and the river communities. And so it might be a disagreement, but it's not a doubt about my motivations. And that is really important to me. All I have is that respect and that reputation and people knowing that I'm doing what I believe is right for the river. And so that's really important to me. So I won't take that dirty money. And besides that, I don't want to help a company greenwash for themselves. I don't want a company to be able to say, we're a good company because we donate to the river. Right. Yeah. We donate to the river. That's BS. If you're doing wrong, the only way you get out of that is by doing right. And then we'll respect you.
There you go. All right. All right, let's talk about your book, The Green Amendment, The People's Fight to Secure a Clean, Safe, and Healthy Environment. It's now in its second edition, so must be doing pretty well, huh?
I think so. And the
Yeah.
most important thing about the book, right? First off, if anybody buys the book, every penny goes to the Green Amendment movement. Not a single penny goes in Maya's pocket, because this is not about making money for Maya. This is about saving the world. So that's number one for people to know.
Okay, well, we're all about saving the world.
We're all about saving the world. But I wrote the book to help inspire people to want to join the Green Amendment movement and get on the Green Amendment path. So it's a book filled with stories that explain why our current laws don't work and how real people are being harmed as a result of this current system of laws. Tells stories about how the Green Amendments that exist, primarily in Pennsylvania and Montana and now New York, how they are making a difference in a positive, powerful way, and then telling stories about how people are coming together to advance this Green Amendment pathway in their own states, what they're doing, why they're doing it. So it's a lot of stories of real people, as well as an effort to help, hopefully, not just inspire, but also educate people so they can become Green Amendment champions in their own right.
Okay, and this book can be found where?
It can be found anywhere.
Okay.
If people go to forthegenerations.org, FORTHE generations.org, there's a tab for the book, and there's a link to Barnes & Noble, independent booksellers, Amazon. You can go to all of those outlets directly too.
Sure.
You can pretty much find it anywhere.
Okay.
Or you can go to that page if you have concerns about buying from a particular kind of outlet. You can go to that page, find different options, or you can buy it directly from the organization, which means more money goes into the pocket of the organization to do this good work. And there was something else important I was going to say. Plus, you can find other resources and things to help you on your Green Amendment journey if you go that way. But otherwise, that was the other thing, is you can get it. It's in print, right? So they're real books. It's an or there's an audio version.
Okay. It's been a pleasure. If you got anything else you'd like to add, Maya?
No, I just really appreciate being here. I look forward to your upcoming climate podcast. I really want to hear that, because I think that's really going to help me and my work. And I thank you for the opportunity to hopefully get people to join the Green Amendment movement and or fight for the Delaware River or their own rivers.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How can people contribute to the two initiatives that you're working on?
So for Green Amendments for the Generations, go to www.forthegenerations.org with an S on the end, .org. For the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, go to www.delawareriverkeeper.org. And in both of those places, you'll find information, resources, ways to engage, the ability to sign up for free, because I don't believe you should have to pay money in order to be part of an environmental movement. But of course, there is also a tab to donate. Okay, great. All right. So thank you very much, Maya. I appreciate you being with us on Lean to the Left. Thank you for having me. Earlier I mentioned that Jack Kerfoot would be back with us to discuss what's going on with the individual states. The next episode of that series will be on July 27th, and we'll be talking about what's going on in 5 Midwestern states. It's a really interesting episode, so I just wanted to let you guys know about that so you can be looking for it. Now, in addition to that, Jack Kerfoot and our guest here, Maya, are going to be with us together for a joint discussion about climate change and energy and what's going on in individual states around the country with respect to the Green Amendment and other environmental issues. That'll take place on August the 7th, so be watching for that as well. So now another quick break, and then I'll be right back with some closing comments. Hey guys, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you'll come back on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that I hope you find interesting, entertaining, and enlightening.
Let your friends know about this podcast and take a minute to subscribe. Just go to podcast.leantotheleft.net to subscribe, check out the upcoming interview schedule, and listen to all of our episodes. And follow us on social media. Facebook at the Lean to the Left Podcast, Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at @BobGaddy_Lean to the Left, and TikTok at Lean to the Left. And you can watch the episodes at YouTube at Lean to the Left. And don't forget to visit our blog site, leantotheleft.net, where you'll find commentary on the news by some excellent writers with progressive perspectives on a whole range of topics. You can sign up as a member there, and of course, it's all free. Now, this is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.